Alright, I'm Chris Savold alongside John Schooner. We are back, Fantasy Football Formula, and coming to you just during some Week 2 preseason games, and we're here with our hot takes about fantasy football. Now, it's been a long summer, a lot of developments. First off, Le'Veon Bell, just today, his suspension was reduced from 4 games to 3 after missing multiple appointments for drug testing. John, what are your thoughts about this suspension?
I don't know if it makes that big of a difference going from 4 to 3. I think people are still drafting Le'Veon Bell pretty high in drafts, but I mean, it is still one more game of Le'Veon Bell for all of his owners, so that's really good news. But I still think that for Le'Veon Bell, you have to get DeAngelo Williams, which is kind of tough, but based on how good DeAngelo Williams has been, it's pretty nice. But to waste like a flex spot on him in the draft, it's kind of hard to do, but Le'Veon Bell is worth it, even for 13 games.
Yeah, so here's my issue about Bell. I wrote about this earlier in my player profiles, is the suspension already hurts you for 3 weeks, and then he's also missing another week for a bye. Then there's also a 50-50 chance that he goes out for the rest of the season, and 80-20 chance that he gets injured at a certain point throughout the season and misses multiple games. I think talent-wise, easily the best running back in the NFL. He's the best receiving skills in the NFL as a running back, and he also is an extremely versatile runner. I think, like you said, spending a pick on DeAngelo Williams, his ADP right now, according to Fantasy Pros, is pretty late. He's the 33rd running back to go, to be drafted according to his ADP, and the 82nd player overall. So you're spending a 9th round pick. Guys that are drafted around him: Giovanni Bernard, Duke Johnson, Arian Foster, Chris Ivory, Frank Gore. Those are 4 running backs that are guaranteed a pretty good chance of finishing within the top 25. So, and that guy would also probably be your 4th running back. So, I think that picking Le'Veon Bell, even though his ADP is hampered by his suspension and probably makes it more of a discount for you, you're also spending a later pick on him. So essentially, when you combine the 2 picks, if you were to trade like an 8th round pick and then 11th overall pick, it ends up as like a 9th or 10th pick. So it's not that much of a bargain.
It's really hard. I mean, DeAngelo Williams is essentially a handcuff. So it's really hard. It's hard seeing myself draft a handcuff in the 9th round. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous to say that, but based on how good DeAngelo Williams has been, it's not that crazy, but that's 2 picks that you're using on Le'Veon Bell that maybe you could use on David Johnson. And I'm not sure if that's worth it. In the 2nd round, I think Le'Veon Bell, you want Le'Veon Bell if you get him in the 2nd round, but the likeliness of that is very low. You might want to just take somebody, David Johnson, maybe Ezekiel Elliott or Lamar Miller, who you're getting for the whole season, not assuming that they won't get injured, but Le'Veon Bell has about as high injury risk as anyone. But it's hard to just take Le'Veon Bell because it's so risky having him. You don't even know how many games you're going to get out of him, even once he's done with the suspension.
In my mind, I see it that Le'Veon Bell, DeAngelo Williams is a running back or a handcuff with no upside unless Le'Veon Bell gets injured, and they're handcuffs with great upside without any injuries, like Chris Ivory, Giovanni Bernard, Amir Abdullah. All of these guys can make an impact. Danny Woodhead without having to be a starter. DeAngelo Williams is irrelevant unless Le'Veon Bell is out. When Le'Veon Bell is out, he's a top 5 running back.
Now, I mean, if you have both of them, then you should be in pretty good shape, but you just use 2 picks on 1 player, basically. Because DeAngelo Williams and Le'Veon Bell are practically 1 player together. Whereas you could be taking Giovanni Bernard, who is pretty independent, even with Jeremy Hill, even as a backup. I mean, he's a viable flex play every week. But it's kind of hard to take basically 1 player in 2 rounds in the 1st through 9th round. It's tough.
Yeah, so also breaking the past week, Dorial Green-Beckham, a former 2nd-round receiver who's known for his blend of athleticism and also his height and physical physique, was traded to the Philadelphia Eagles for a backup offensive lineman. I say this trade is probably better for the Eagles because they're basically set at offensive line aside from Lane Johnson's possible suspension. I think this gives their wide receiving core a solid upside. I think Jordan Matthews played decent during the last 2 weeks of the season. Nelson Aguilar played pretty bad the entire year, but he does have that upside of what was second round, third round pick when he was drafted. I think as a fantasy option, he doesn't pose much of an upside, Dorial Green-Beckham. I wouldn't draft him in a standard 10-team league.
I agree.
12-team, maybe 14-team, I'd draft him.
But
I would say stay away from now.
He was interesting with the Titans because of their lack of receiving depth right now. But the Eagles' receivers have proven to be kind of difficult, and I just don't see Dorial Green-Beckham getting any good enough playing time that he could be a flex option for you.
Yeah, and Dorial Green-Beckham, in limited playing time last year, according to Pro Football Focus, he had a okay grade. 73.6 was ranked 53rd among all wide receivers, which is about lining up with a wide receiver 2, and he'd probably be a wide receiver 3. Jordan Matthews and Nelson Aguilar would probably both start ahead of him. Probably not a lot of snaps for Beckham this year.
Fantasy-wise, it's kind of tough with the Eagles' offense. You never know what you're going to get out of them.
Yeah.
I think probably Ryan Matthews is the best bet in their offense, but their receivers are really hard to bet on except maybe Zach Ertz.
Yeah, and then preseason, speaking of that, DeMarco Murray, a former Eagle, played very well in preseason. The entire Titans running backs played well. Murray, he grew on me after this game. I wasn't sure whether he could replicate his 2014 season in Tennessee after having a terrible 2015 season in Philadelphia. And I don't think he will come close to replicating his 2014 season. But he does pose, to me, he seems like a flex with upside.
I liked what I saw from DeMarco Murray because it's kind of difficult with DeMarco Murray because he doesn't have elite speed like some of the other running backs who we see who we think of DeMarco Murray as on the same level.
Yeah.
But when he broke away into space in that first preseason game, he showed that speed that he had with the Dallas, and he seemed like the electric back he was with Dallas, breaking through the line out of the I formation. And I think DeMarco Murray looked the comfortable back he was in Dallas, unlike kind of the uncomfortable situation he was last year. He looked like a confident runner, unlike he did last year in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and then also the Redskins running game really struggled. Kirk Cousins was 5 for 5. He played very well. And then even today, Jamison Crowder was heavily targeted by Colt McCoy, and even though that's a backup quarterback, that still was kind of a significant happening for the Redskins because Jamison Crowder, you don't really know which wide receiver is going to lead the Redskins in points. Personally, I really like DeSean Jackson. Whenever he was on the field last year, he performed very well. The Redskins with DeSean Jackson, I think, were 6-2. Without him, 2-6. So he's a game-changing player for the Redskins, and I think he's one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL. Because even though he might not put up great statistics, simply having him on the field changes the game.
DeSean Jackson while the Redskins don't really have a elite receiver, DeSean Jackson poses that threat that teams are afraid of. Everybody knows that DeSean Jackson can break off an 80-yard touchdown on you. And they use their number one corner on him. They are afraid of DeSean Jackson. And that opens up space for other guys like Jordan Reed and Pierre Garçon. And without DeSean Jackson, it's a lot harder to replicate an elite talent when you don't really have one. But DeSean Jackson, with his big playability, is always a presence out on the field.
Yeah, and then also, you see how the running backs really struggle. Even today, Matt Jones averaging pretty well. He's averaging over 4 yards per carry, surprisingly enough, compared to last game where Keith Marshall and Matt Jones combined for 2 or 3 yards on about 10 carries. Jones, that worried me. He dropped, I think, 2 spots in my rankings, but I wouldn't completely take him off my board just for one bad game.
Matt Jones, I think, can be a good person to take this year because you know that he's probably going to get starter workload because there's nobody really rivaling him, and he's playing for a pretty good offense, so he's going to get some touchdowns. The only thing I worry about with Matt Jones is, well, there's really two things. Part of it is that he fumbles too much. It's really hard to bet on a guy to be a bell cow running back when he fumbles too much. And also, sometimes, especially on the goal line, Matt Jones just had problems getting through the line last year. It was just a struggle for him sometimes. But I think that Matt Jones can get the workload, and I think he's ready for it, but he needs to perform in order to keep it throughout the whole season.
Then Eddie Lacy, he performed very well. I think he's a top 10 running back in my opinion. In my ranks, he is currently at number 10, just ahead of LeSean McCoy and Thomas Rawls. I think he has a lot of upside this year. There's calculated risk when taking him, but you can learn to deal with that and have him as a solid RB2. What are your thoughts, Sean?
I think Eddie Lacy is going to have a bounce back year, but I don't see him as being as reliable as someone like LeSean McCoy. He's still fairly low in my rankings. I have him at 21, but he's going to improve this year.
You know what, John, I said Eddie Lacy finishes the year as a top 15 running back.
I say Eddie Lacy does not finish the year as a top 15 running back.
Bet on it. Yeah, so Devonta Freeman, he also kind of struggled against the Redskins defense. Now, the Redskins defense, obviously, their front seven is absolutely atrocious. But you've run good tackling corners in Josh Norman and Brashad Breeland. You have some good linebackers, and Will Compton really played well. Sua Cravens really played well. I still think it's a little bit worrisome to see Devonta Freeman not play that well against a not great defense because he really struggled down the stretch last year, and this really speaks to his struggles over the last half of the year.
Devonta Freeman, I don't like him because I don't see him being anywhere near what he did last year. He's still going to be thrown out of the backfield as a receiver, but I don't see him getting the volume that he got last year because I don't think he's going to be all that consistent. I don't know about Devonta Freeman. He's still probably a first-round pick, but I'm not drafting him.
Yeah, for me, he'd be a second-round pick, but I honestly would just shy away from drafting him unless he was like late second round. Then that's about it for preseason. Some other things happen, but we'll move along so we can fit in more. So we have a new section called Uneasies, and these are guys that we're feeling they have upside, but also there's a lot of risk with them. So first off, David Johnson, John, and this is what I think about David Johnson. Jeremy Hill, C.J. Anderson, Monty Ball. What do these guys all have in common? They all played so well over the last half of their respective season, drafted in the first 2 rounds, and ended up playing terrible next year. Jeremy Hill averaged over 5 yards per carry. C.J. Anderson averaged over 5 yards per carry. Both of them finished outside the top 18.
In my opinion, there's 2 David Johnsons we could see. There's the David Johnson that we saw at the beginning of the year, who was all right, but, I mean, he was a backup. David Johnson's going to be the starter for the Cardinals at the beginning of the year. But are we going to see the David Johnson we saw at the end of the year, who was arguably one of the best running backs in football?
Yeah, and
David Johnson was electric at the end of the year. Out of the passing game, on the goal line, in between the 20s, everything David Johnson did was fantastic. He was amazing. But are we going to see that David Johnson? There is some competition for David Johnson. He is not necessarily a 20-carry running back, but even if he gets 18 carries, if he can produce the way he did last year, David Johnson is a top 10 running back.
Yeah, we did see him struggle against the Seahawks and some good defenses in the last few games of 2015. So you do have to keep that in your mind. He's a lot of upside, but also a lot of risk. Would I spend a first-round pick on him? Well, I also have a lot of running backs ahead of him, and that's not a knock on David Johnson. They're just guys I'm really high on. And there's Lamar Miller, who I love, Adrian Peterson. You know what, John? Let's make a bet. I say Lamar Miller finishes the year higher than David Johnson.
I say David Johnson finishes above Lamar Miller.
Bet on it! We were saying David Johnson struggled against the Seahawks. Thomas Rawls, Seahawks running back. Just like, this is kind of the same issue. One, his ankle is really holding him back this preseason. That's a little bit worrisome. He only played a few games last year, but he did get injured. And this is his backfield for the most part. There's
There's
C.J.
worlds-
Procise and Alex Collins, but that's about
worlds of upside for Thomas Rawls. There's Marshawn Lynch upside with Thomas Rawls. He was amazing last year, but are we going to see basically what Marshawn Lynch produced and what Thomas Rawls produced, or are we going to see a bust? And I think there's no way to know with Thomas Rawls. There was not a very big sample size with Thomas Rawls, even less than David Johnson.
Yeah,
but there is so much upside there. There's a top 15 running back there, maybe even a top 10 running back. But it's really tough to predict what's going to go happen with him. He's a risky pick, but there's a lot of upside there.
Yeah, and I mean that's what fantasy's about. You have to take risks that you feel confident about, and you're not going to go through a draft. You're not going to win a league without taking risks. You can, I say, take some risky picks and some established picks. One guy who played very well in our league this year, he took a lot of guys that were risky, but then he took guys like Frank Gore they're going to finish in the top 20. They're going to be decent for you. You might as well take them as a backup. And that's what I think with backups. You have to temper your expectations with picking sleepers. And now we're moving on to growing pains. And these are guys that have really grown on us in the past few months. For me, Deshaun Jackson. We talked about him earlier, so we'll skip over them. But then also Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz, I say, we were talking about best fantasy option. The guy I'm most confident will finish in the top 10 at his position is Zach Ertz. And here's why. He's always finished as around a top 5 finisher for tight ends by a standard of yards, but he hasn't had the touchdown production. Now we have Todd Haley, if I'm correct, offense, who in Kansas City used Travis Kelce a very solid amount. A wide receiver didn't catch a touchdown the entire 2014 season because he relied heavily on his tight end in the running game. I think that it wouldn't be too much of a surprise if Ertz put up around 8 touchdowns, 800 yards, and that's a top 5 finish for tight ends.
Nothing has grown on me about Zach Ertz. I want Zach Ertz as my tight end this year for a very similar reason to why I picked Delaney Walker last year. Carson Wentz, I think, will be the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles by the end of the season. And rookie quarterbacks look to their tight ends. Zach Ertz is very reliable. He always has been. He's always a yards producer. And rookie quarterbacks look to their tight end in the end zone. And Zach Ertz is a big target. He's been very consistent. I think Zach Ertz is a really good tight end to pick up.
And John, what are your thoughts on Isaiah Crowell?
I really like Isaiah Crowell because their new coaching staff really likes him, and he's gonna get a lot of carries. I think Duke Johnson might take some of the catching opportunities, but I think Isaiah Crowell is gonna get the touchdowns. I think he has a good chance to get 15 to 20 carries a game.
I really like Duke Johnson. I think he's more versatile. I think he's third down back. And I think Duke Johnson will finish the year better than Isaiah Crowell.
I think Isaiah Crowell will be drastically better than Duke Johnson.
Bet on it. All right, now we move on to over-under. John, I'm going to name a guy, one receiver, running back, and then I'm going to name guys that are drafted around him ADP-wise, and you're going to say who you like more. Dez Bryant is going to be our base. And the next person I name, if you like him more, you say over. Like him less, you say under. So Dez Bryant, AJ Green.
Under.
For me, it's over. I really like AJ Green. He's missed 3 games in the last 4 years. Extremely consistent, and he's going to get a huge workload this year. Jordy Nelson.
Under. I think Dez Bryant is going to be a top 5 receiver this year, maybe top 3.
John, I say AJ Green finishes the year higher than Dez Bryant.
I say Dez Bryant finishes higher than AJ Green.
Bet on it. Brandon Marshall.
Under.
DeAndre Hopkins.
Under.
Okay, for me, I'd go under for Marshall. Under for Hopkins, but that's a tough one. My rankings for Bryant, I have Bryant at 7, actually. I have Robinson ahead of him. I probably should change that. But Bryant, it's a lot of risk there, but he's really talented.
Dez Bryant's my number 4 receiver. I'm taking him over anybody except Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham, or Julio Jones. I think you take him in the first round. I think you can be confident as long as he doesn't get hurt. I think you can be confident Dez Bryant is your wide receiver.
All right, John. Now Jarvis Landry. Julian Edelman.
Over.
Jeremy Maclin.
Under.
Doug Baldwin.
Over.
Eric Decker.
Over.
Demaryius Thomas.
Over.
For me, Edelman under, Maclin under, Baldwin under, Decker higher, or over. Demaryius Thomas, over. Jonathan Stewart. First off, Carlos Hyde.
Under. No, over on Hyde.
I'm going to say under. C.J. Anderson.
Over.
I'm going to say over. Forte.
Under.
I'm going to say under. Rawls.
Over
easily. So then overall, guys, we're going to talk about LeSean McCoy. I really like LeSean McCoy. I think he's going to bounce back this year. He struggled a little bit last year. The combination of Carlos Williams' injury makes me more confident. And LeSean McCoy, he is one of the best running backs in the NFL. And he's really slept on because he kind of goes in and out. But talent-wise, not fantasy-wise, I say your best running backs in the NFL, Peterson, Bell, Gurley, and I think you can make the argument that LeSean McCoy is right up there with them.
I agree. I think LeSean McCoy is a really good running back, and it helps a lot that he's in that offense. Rex Ryan loves to run the football, and LeSean McCoy, you're getting a steal on him later in the draft. He could easily be
a third-round pick.
He could easily be a high second-round pick. LeSean McCoy is very consistent. He's a good running back. He's not very consistent, but he always puts up numbers, and he's a really good running back to rely on in fantasy because he struggles week to week, he usually puts up good numbers by the end of the season, and I think you can take LeSean McCoy in the early third round with complete confidence, even late second round.
So then notable handcuffs, obviously Cincinnati with Gio and Hill. When you think about it, if you just started Cincinnati as a team, you'd probably get the best return in value because you have Andy Dalton, top 15 quarterback in my opinion, AJ Green, top 5 wide receiver in my opinion. Then you kind of have Tyler Boyd, which probably won't do that much, but then you have 2 running backs who will probably finish in the top 25.
I think you can start both of them. You can start Jeremy Hill as a running back too, and you can start Gio Bernard confidently as your flex. Gio Bernard has proven. I was always skeptical of Gio Bernard because I would say, he's not a starting running back, but he is a flex in fantasy. Easy flex. You can put him in your lineup, lock him in. Gio Bernard has been a top 20 performer. He's so consistent. He always gets enough touches to perform. I don't think he's going to take away Jeremy Hill's spot, but Gio Bernard, I think, is one of the most explosive backs in the league when he gets the ball.
Yeah, and then we also, one of the more hazy backfields is Miami. Last year, their coaches, one of the most frustrating things I've ever experienced in fantasy was 1, having Lamar Miller on my team, and 2, just being a Lamar Miller fan. I've had him 2 years in a row, hopefully making it 3. Miami would just not give the ball to Lamar Miller. If Lamar Miller, this is why I'm so high on him, if Lamar Miller had Arian Foster's workload over the past few years, he would end up as the RB1. Let me tell you why.
He would. Lamar Miller, he's an explosive back. He's a really good running back. I can see him
talent-wise, easily top 5 running back.
I could see him easily in the top 10 this year. Lamar Miller he can be an early second round pick in my opinion. And the Dolphins backfield is just so annoying as a fantasy owner, as watching the game, because not seeing such a talented running back like Lamar Miller, probably the top player in the Dolphins offense, was just so frustrating as somebody who owned him, as somebody watching. Lamar Miller is so explosive out of the backfield. He can catch passes, he can run, he's shifty. Lamar Miller is the type of running back that you want as your bell cow running back, and they refuse to give him that workload. But in Houston, you are going to see that workload. Arian Foster and Lamar Miller are switching places, and Lamar Miller is getting the better deal out of it.
Yeah, Lamar Miller, he has not missed a game he has not missed a game his entire career, which is unheard of for running backs. For me, Lamar Miller, let me just read you out. When he had at least 15 carries, Lamar Miller, I'm going to read you the points, John, that he had. Over 15 carries. 17, he had 14 and 35, 12, 26, 16, 15, 20 carries, 9 points, 12 carries, 20 points, 15 carries, 12 points, 19 carries, 6 points. When he had under 10 carries, or under 14 carries, 4.2, 6.3, 3.6, 9.4, 1.3. Miami just was so frustrating, and I think this year is just going to be even more frustrating because this is going to be a true RBBC. Because Foster's old. Ajay, I just don't think he has enough juice to be a starter at this point.
I think if you're going to take one of the two, I think you want Foster. But it's hard to take a high pick on him because he's very uncertain.
He's so injury prone and he's so old. Oh, they did switch teams. That's kind of fun.
We've seen Arian Foster in the past, top 10 running back. He's a great running back. He really is. But he's really injury prone. But if Arian Foster can get some carries, I think he could be a flex option. But it's just really hard to know because I do agree with you. I think this is going to be an RBBC. If one of them can distinguish themselves, the Dolphins coaching staff did say that Arian Foster was far and away the best running back they had at camp. But other teams say that and they saw it up in an RBBC. If Arian Foster can prove himself as the number one running back in Miami, as their bell cow running back, you want him on your team if he can stay healthy. But I don't know if that's going to happen.
The one backfield to stay away from is Detroit.
You don't know.
Amir Abdullah and Theo Riddick are both great PPR backs, but the thing is, you only have one third down back, and
they have a third down back, and they have guys between the 20s, but they have no goal line back, and they have no first and second down back. There's no way to trust any of them. I think the only player who is probably startable week 1 is probably Matt Stafford.
Yeah,
but
I agree with that.
It's hard to even trust Golden Tate because Marvin Jones is probably as good as Golden Tate is. They're both pretty hazy, as you said, and their running backs are non-existent. I don't even know if they have a starting running back. They might have like 3 handcuffs.
Exactly.
It's so hard to know about Detroit. They don't have a single startable skill player. I think it's hard to look at anybody on the Detroit Lions.
So now we're going to the Redskins portion of the podcast. So my thoughts from the first game against the Falcons. First off, one name sticks out in my mind. And John, you know who that is? Let me tell you who that is. Sua Cravens. Man, this guy's playing 100%. My 7th grade basketball coach, Coach Rendell Williams, he told me one thing when I was on his team. He said, Chris, if you're going to make a mistake, make it at 100%. And you know what? Sua Cravens played at 100% at 100 miles per hour. And you know what he did? He didn't make that many mistakes. He had 3 tackles, 1 on special teams, which is a really tough part about the Redskins' past 5 years. We keep giving up touchdowns on special teams. Sua Cravens is a bright spot in the game. Now, John's looking up the depth chart for the Redskins right now, and Sua Cravens is listed as the 3rd-string middle linebacker. Yes, that is because he doesn't have a position. He's been in between a safety, an outside linebacker, and a middle linebacker. He's going to play nickel packages. He's basically going to be a Swiss Army knife for the defense. He can do anything he wants, and he's so good.
I think the Redskins, the one thing they have locked down right now is corners. Their corners are looking
best cornerback group in the NFL, in my opinion. They
have 2 very good corners that they're going to be able to rely on. Number 1 receivers should in theory not be too much of an issue as they have been in the past, because that was the issue for the Redskins last season. It was not possible for them to shut down Odell Beckham. It was not possible for them to shut down Julio Jones. But now, with Josh Norman, they can. And looking at Rashad Breeland, another up-and-coming corner, I think that is the least of their problems. The issue is in the front, on defense and on offense. Their skill players are good, but both lines leave a little bit to be desired.
I agree with that.
And the running game needs to step it up. Matt Jones can change this running game. He showed his explosiveness last year, but they need that explosiveness this year because you can't be a good playoff team without a running game. It's just too hard.
Yeah, and like I said, cornerbacks wise, one of the best in the NFL. I put Buffalo ahead of them, and then Arizona if you count Tyrann Mathieu as a corner, but I consider him kind of like a safety. And then you can also look at Oakland with Sean Smith And then David Amerson. We don't know if Amerson will repeat his great year. But then you have Brashad Breeland, who is the best. He's good at tackling running backs.
Thank you.
And he's also very good in zone or man coverage and in press coverage. And Josh Norman, who excels in zone coverage. I think that our defensive coordinator will have a lot of fun with creating good defenses where both of those guys can excel. Safeties, terrible. DeAngelo Hall, he's never going to be terrible, but he's never going to be great because he used to be one of the best defensive playmakers in the NFL. But now he's old. He's like 31, 32. That's pretty old for a safety. And then you also have David Bruton, and then Duke Iheanacho. And neither of those guys are going to play that well. As long as they're serviceable, I think the defense can be a good defense.
Maybe they should put Sua Cravens as safety, Chris.
Maybe they should, John. Maybe they should. Then you also have at linebacker Will Compton, and then you have Martell Spate kind of going for that second middle linebacking job. Perry Riley, Mason Foster. I think, though statistically, the middle linebackers might not stand out. They're a hard-nosed group, which is really underrated in today's NFL.
I think the biggest threat to Washington is Dallas in that division. They're the only people holding them back from being a playoff team, a lock-in playoff team. And the Redskins need to lock down Dallas when they play them. Des Bryant, let's even say that he's locked down by Josh Norman. They're going to need to figure out a way to stop Ezekiel Elliott. They have the great offensive line. I think that is what it comes down to this year for the Redskins. They have to beat Dallas. And they're going to have to find out a way to stop the run because I think Ezekiel Elliott could easily be, I mean, this fantasy-wise, but I could think he could be a top 10 running back even as rookie. And they need a way to lock him down. The passing game should not be as much of an issue as it was last year with Josh Norman. I think that was a huge signing for them.
Yeah.
But Josh Norman can't stop running backs rushing for 200 yards against the Redskins. And I can see people doing that to them. I think that's the key for their defense right now. The linebackers, I think, will be solid. I think that stopping the run, you can't put all the pressure on Ryan Kerrigan to just stop the run. It's really important for everybody else to step up and stop opposing running backs.
Yeah, I think the injury of Junior Gillette really hurt the team. We, depth-wise, were set at outside linebacker because Preston Smith, 8 sacks as a rookie, is really good, and he only started about half the year. Now with Smith starting, and you only have Trent Murphy basically as a backup. You have Houston Bates, but he didn't really play at all last year. If we see Preston Smith step up and continue to play well, I think that's very promising for the Redskins. And I think neither Preston Smith nor Ryan Kerrigan are great against the run, but I think the pressure they put on the quarterback, I think pass defense-wise, we're going to be good this year, but run defense-wise, it's going to be tough because we have a terrible front seven, just absolutely terrible, and losing Terrence Knight didn't make it any easier, that's for sure, but we still have Chris Baker, and I'd say that's the lone bright spot of our defensive line.
I think, as I said, I think that's the key. And also, the offense is going to have to produce because their defense is not locked down enough to play in defensive battles. And while Dallas isn't either, Dallas has a superior offense, no question.
No question.
It's important that the Redskins, I think that their passing game is going to be successful. Kirk Cousins is a solid quarterback, and he has a good group. The running game is key. The running game is very key. When the Redskins had Alfred Morris at his height, they made the playoffs with Albert Griffin III. Matt Jones has a chance this year to be a playmaking back in this offense, but they're going to need him to do that because if they want to be a playoff team, they can't just throw the ball and hope that people don't run for 200 yards on them.
Yeah.
They have to be well-rounded, and I think that's what you're looking for in the first couple of weeks in the Redskins.
All right, so that's about all we have from Fantasy Football Formula. From John Schooner to Chris Savold and all you fantasy fans out there, peace out!